Are you struggling to find the right professional talent for your project? Are you working with a limited budget?
We are so excited about our next sponsor, Casting Networks. I have personally used Casting Networks to release a number of projects for free to the industry's largest network of professional performers for my commercial work and for my very first short film, Strange Thing.
Creators can manage submissions, schedule auditions, request and review self-tapes, and book top talent for their projects, all in one place. All for free.
On Casting Networks, you can create an account and send your casting call to thousands of professional talent. So join Casting Networks, the industry's preferred casting platform where more than 1.2 million performers have scheduled over 14 million auditions. That's a lot of auditions. Visit www.castingnetworks.com/movies to create an account for free today. You know, making movies is hard.
Making movies is hard.
Welcome. This is the podcast about the struggle of being an independent filmmaker. I'm Mark Bassell, the founding host of the podcast, and I'm a sci-fi horror filmmaker, and my first feature film, The Alternate, will be coming out on Tuesday, September 6th. I've been lying this whole time. It's actually the September 6th, not the 13th. It's on digital and DVD. We just had the trailer drop last week and the poster drop last week, so make sure to check those things out if you haven't seen them.
Yay! I'm Liz Menon. I'm a writer, director, producer who has made 2 features, Speed of Life and Bread and Butter, and I'm currently in development on 37 more. I'm a distribution consultant who used to manage Sundance's creative distribution initiative. But this week, we welcome director extraordinaire Meera Menon on the show to talk about landing her second feature film, how she parlayed that job into a career of TV directing, working on shows like The Punisher, Titans, For All Mankind, The Walking Dead, Westworld, and Ms. Marvel. After that, we play another round of Eric Tom's The Game, where we figure out how to handle on-set emergencies or general production, development, distribution issues. And we also chat about how best to promote your film when it's about to be released. But first, Alrik, how you doing?
Well, I'm doing pretty great. I've been waiting to hear more news about my movie for a while. And then on, what was it, Thursday night or something? I checked my email and it had gone to my trash from earlier in the day. But my PR rep reached out to me. He was like, yeah, we're starting. We're in deadline. Check it out. We're going to be in this horror thing tomorrow. We're going to be this other thing. It's like all this stuff happening. So it was really exciting. So I, of course, like immediately started blasting it out to people and getting it out there, which was really cool. And it's been really exciting. Everyone seems really excited. People love the new trailer. People love the new poster, which is really cool. We don't have a pre-order link yet, so I haven't like actually started the pre-sales part of it really, but that should be coming soon. We're on Rotten Tomatoes finally. So that's one of the things I actually want to talk to you about later. It's like what to do with previous reviews, you know, once they've already been written, but now Rotten Tomatoes is out. How do you link them to Rotten Tomatoes? Like, is that something that I can do, or do I have to beg the writers to do it? We'll save that for later. You know, a little preview of what we want to talk about. So yeah, that's cool. I don't know if you know anything about this kind of thing, but like basically I tried to go onto my Instagram account for The Alternate to like, you know, start bragging about things, and I got locked out. And when I went to like get unlocked out, you know, it was like flagged for spam or phishing or whatever. The email address on there didn't look like my email address. Because it doesn't show you the whole email address. It just shows you like the start and the finish of it.
You got hacked? And it was like, are you saying you got hacked right now?
I don't know. Maybe. I'm not sure, because I didn't set up the Instagram. Someone else did on my team. And so I'm like trying to find that person who set up the Instagram to see like if they have another email address that this, you know, is going to, that's not a scammer, you know, but they haven't been getting back to me. So I don't really know, but I don't really know what to do, because I looked on Instagram and like apparently they have like support, but everyone's saying like they will never get back to you because they have too many people and like they'll just never listen to you. So like what I kind of want to do is just like delete the account, you know, so like just to be done with it and move on. But like I don't know how to do that. So if anyone out there knows how to deal with these problems that I'm having, any advice would be great, because I did a little research and basically made my head hurt. And I'm like, you know what, like I'm just gonna like let people, you know, tag the Alternate film page and follow the Alternate film page, because it's still there and there's not like weird shit being posted on there or anything. It's not like anything is happening with it, you know. So I think it's okay. I just, you know, I either want to get access to it or I want to delete it, because, you know, I think what I'll probably do is just focus on my energy advertising the movie through my own personal account and not through the film one, because my personal account has more followers anyways. So I don't know. But yeah, that's a little bit of like one of those things where like everything's going so great in your life. You're like, yeah, this movie's coming out and life is good and blah, blah, blah. But like, I can't get into this Instagram. Oh, I'm hacked. And it's like making me like be upset. But it's like, why am I upset over something I have no control control over. Like this is a really small thing to be upset about. And then we talked to this really great filmmaker yesterday, Jeff Bania. Is that how you say his last name?
Bana, I think.
Yeah, he's going to be on the show soon. And he has director of movies like The Little Hours and Joshy, Horse Girl, among others. And he was like, yeah, I don't even care about social media. And like, I have a private Instagram account for my friends only. It's like, okay, well, maybe I should give less shits about social media. It seems to work for this guy. So I don't know. But yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, that's kind of how I'm doing. Yeah, nothing really else major to report. Still waiting to hear about LifeLink. End of August. Should have an update by end of August. So, I mean, it's still
great.
It's so funny because they're like saying like, oh, it's going to happen so fast. And I'm like, yeah. I doubt it. Like, is it really going to happen that fast? Probably not. But then, all of a sudden it's like it's still there. So maybe one day something will happen with it. Who knows? But yeah, how are things with you, Liz? What's going on?
I was giggling a little bit when you were talking about Instagram because I was thinking about how I created an Instagram account for my dog using my husband's email address. And we can't get into the account either. And we're completely locked out just because I forgot the password. Like, it's just for very silly, lazy reasons. And I was just thinking about that ridiculous scenario of my husband being like, he can't start an Instagram account because I co-opted his email address for our dog. But I agree. You need to solve that problem. I think you should keep the account up, Alrik. I mean, like, I think you should make it active, and doesn't mean you have to post from it, but just change the bio to say something like most updates coming from at Bursell Productions or Alrik Bursell or whatever your handle.
Well, I can't do that. I can't get into the account at all.
I'm saying, like, don't give up the ghost. Like, keep trying and don't give up.
Oh, right.
Because I think the idea that I'm putting forth is someone's going to hear about your movie who doesn't know who you are. And so they're going to search for the alternate on Instagram. And if you want to relay them back to you, the bio is the best place to do it. Right?
Oh, yeah. Good idea. So it's good to have an account no matter what is what you're saying.
I
so
think
people
you should have
out there create accounts for your movies. And then if you don't use them, then, at least let people know where they can find you so they can stalk you on the internet.
Yeah, some people really love
tip.
Instagram and don't use Twitter or don't use Facebook, right? It's like one of those weird apps that people have a lot of loyalty towards.
Oh, yeah.
What's going on? So this episode will air 2 days before my 38th birthday. So I'm turning 38 on August 24th. I'm giving away too much information. Someone's going to steal my identity. So that is all I'm thinking about right now. And I take my birthday very, very seriously. It's a very important day to me. I have always really high expectations, and then I always get really disappointed every year. But this birthday, I have like a whole birthday weekend planned for this weekend. It involves water. We're going to rent a pool and we're going to go kayaking and eat pizza. And then on
You're going to rent a pool and go kayaking.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And
Amazing.
then on my actual birthday, I have a plan of forcing my husband to eat vegan food. It's always like a really fun, present to myself to force him to eat vegan food. And then we're going to go rock climbing because I've never done a rock climbing gym before. Wow. So those are the exciting things going on, is just obsession with time and growing older and then celebrating with water and rocks. So that is my life.
Wow.
Yep.
That sounds like fun. And you're going to bring your son to all these events?
Nope.
Except the rock climbing, maybe?
He's coming to the pool. He's coming to the pool. That's all. Like,
okay.
The kayaking trip.
Yeah,
they won't. Yeah. And it's a kayaking trip that it's really intense. It's in the LA River. It involves a bike ride. They have like a weight check. Wow. Like there's like you learn about water habitats. Yeah. So we'll see. Basically.
That's good. That's good. It's good they take it seriously. I had a friend of the family who died kayaking. So like,
oh my gosh, no. In the ocean or where?
No, rivers, like whitewater rafting.
Oh.
Yeah, and they're actually a tour guide. So, yeah.
Well, we haven't booked the tickets yet, so like this is good to know.
I think you should do it. I think I went kayaking recently. It was fine.
Yeah,
it's easy. Okay, but just don't go whitewater rafting.
No,
don't do anything.
We're going
dangerous.
in the LA River. The LA River is like a puddle.
When you talk about them like doing it, like weight checks and all, it's like, okay, that's good. Like I love the people who you're working with should be taking it seriously because they're serious. So yeah, I love water too. I'm a huge water fanatic. I've surfed. I've done it all. I haven't jet skied. That's one thing I want to jet ski. One day.
That looks so fun. Well, my whole thing is like, I like water creatures, but I wanted to do tide pooling, but I don't know anyone who wants to get up, like genuinely wants to get up at like 4 a.m. and go to tide pools with me. So like I turned it into a pool instead of a tide pool party.
Everyone loves pools.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like safe. It's COVID safe and we can order pizza and stuff like that.
Nice. But pizza and pools. That's great.
What else is great and starts with a P is Patreon. Don't forget to support us on Patreon, www.patreon.com/MMIH podcast. We also want to celebrate our newest patron and say happy birthday to Kellen Rudnicki. Thanks so much for supporting the show, Kellen. And thanks for your like communicativeness. Thanks for your chattiness on YouTube and on social media. We're just like we don't get a lot of people commenting. Like it's just really nice to have someone who's active. Yeah. So thank you, Kellen.
And thanks for your review too, Kellen. You did the whole thing. You you commented on things like the trifecta. You're like commenting, you become a Patreon, and then you also leave a review. It's like you're doing all the things to help us. So we really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. But people like Kellen who have donated to our Patreon have access to bonus videos, bonus episodes, weekly team meetings, all lots of cool stuff. So don't forget to check out our Patreon today. But without any more delay, here's our chat with Meera Menon. So let's start off with, can you give us the elevator pitch for Equity?
The elevator pitch for Equity. Equity is a female-driven Wall Street thriller about a woman who's navigating a high-profile IPO and the people that are sabotaging her firm along the way. I guess that's, I barely remember what the movie's about. I hope that summarized.
How many days did you shoot the movie?
That movie, I think we had 24 principal photography days and 3 or 4 days of second unit work in New York, because we shot that movie in Philadelphia for New York. And so we had 3 or 4 days in New York. I remember picking up just shots of our characters crossing the street and things like that, just to set it in the world. Mm. And then we had one weekend, I think, of pickups down the road, closer to when we were actually locking, which was, those were very sparse, but yeah.
What can you say about the budget?
What can I say about the budget? I mean, the budget when we were in editorial, our budget for production was just shy of $1 million. And I don't recall exactly how much the producers raised to finish, but they definitely, they applied for a bridge loan, I remember, at one point while we were finishing in the edit. And then once the movie got into Sundance, they were able to get their merry band of investors to cough up some more money to help us actually finish the film. So all in, I actually don't know. That's the thing. That movie was very much, I was brought on as a director for hire, kind of. The script had been written, the producers had raised most of that initial $1 million for production. And they brought me on basically because Mark Stolaroff, who I think is a mutual friend, he knew Alicia Reiner, who's one of the producers, and she's also one of the actresses in the film. And they were looking for a woman for sure. They definitely wanted 2 X chromosomes on, at the time, that was part of what they were looking for in the director's chair. And he put me forward for the job. And so I just met with them, and that's how I got on board. So a lot of the brass tacks of how that movie was put together as an independent film, some of it I was involved with, but a lot of it I really wasn't. Yeah.
Well, you answered the next question in that last answer, so I'm just going to skip to the next one. How long did you spend working on the film from being brought on to it being released?
Well, that movie was so crazy because it was a rocket ship, I really did that movie. I had made a micro-budget film as my first film, and then I was really planning on just doing that again and again and again, until I could get a job directing television, which I felt okay, that's how you make a living being a director. I read Equity and I was this is like, it didn't necessarily feel like something I would have like created from the ground up, but like, I definitely felt like I knew how to make it. And I definitely felt like it read like a great TV show. And that was their intention. And after like, fast forward to when, I'll answer your question in a second, but like fast forward to when the movie was sold, like Sony was going to develop it as a TV show. It was very much like presented as the potential pilot for a TV show, or there were ideas for how to create a pilot of a TV show out of it. So I was like, this is going to get me a TV directing job if I make this movie, regardless of what happens to it. I don't know if any of us expected it to get into Sundance and be bought by Sony Pictures Classics and all the things that you like dream of. Like that was all very surprising to me from like the initial conceit of why I did it. But I had been sent the script like in February of 2015, and then we were shooting it by July, and then we were in Sundance with it by January 2016, so under a year. And it was bought by Sony Pictures Classics that year. And so much of that story of like how it was, why it was bought. I mean, I was very proud of like, I think we did like, like a lot with very little to make that movie feel like the real deal. But Sundance is such a funny space. I'm sure you guys like know and talk about, and Liz know, very well, like it's a market, right? So like that year, I remember like it just happened to be a pretty hot season for buying. And so we got lucky a little bit, like we were in like a really good year at Sundance where things were getting bought and like for much more than anyone expected. And you can kind of look it up in 2016, what that year was like. But yeah, there's a lot of luck basically that went into the reason that movie was able to be done so quickly and actually get out there the way it did.
I remember that year. I remember everyone being like really excited about the future of independent film because of the purchases that were made at Sundance. Yeah. And then the bottom fell out. So compared to all the other projects you've done, which are numerous, both in TV and film, how difficult was this one?
Was Equity?
Mm-hmm.
It was incredibly difficult because of that it just wasn't, that was more money than I had ever imagined making, at least like my first film was definitely not the second, third, like I said, I was like planning on just kind of doing micro budgets, 100,000 to, 250,000 or less, that was the world I was really wrapping my mind around. So I have $1 million to make a movie. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be able to do everything. And then you realize that it's like a movie about people that work on Wall Street who are making like a cool like 7 figures as their salary. And it's like their lifestyle requires a certain level of design and scale to certainly the sets we were shooting in, and the filmmaking, required a kind of finesse and kind of a sheen to it that was actually quite difficult to accomplish on that budget level. So yeah, I think compared to, TV is tight and fast and all those things as well, but I don't think anything's quite as hard as trying to make a movie and finish a movie without the money that you need to be able to do it the way you're at least dreaming and talking about doing it.
Can you talk about like what happened right after Equity was finished being filmed even? Like were you immediately on the search for direct TV directing jobs, or like how did that come about? Like, was it something that happened after the movie got into Sundance, or was it already in progress before that? Like, how did it lead you to your first TV directing job?
Between my first and second movie, I did a lab at Fox Global Directors Initiative is what it was called at the time. It was like 20 women from all different kind of walks of life but mainly within independent filmmaking, and everyone wanting to get into episodic directing for kind of the reason I outlined, because we all have bills to pay, and it's like the kind of town, I think, as far as like being able to just be on set, work with actors, direct, do your thing, and be actually kind of compensated for it fairly or generously in some cases. So it was something I had very much on my mind. It was something I was very much trying to angle towards. And like I said, when Equity kind of came to me, I was like, if I could direct this, I feel like I'd really be able to like show that I can direct, for Shonda Rhimes or something like that, like a nice, like kind of feminist corporate drama or something, which is not the first episode of television I got. I got like something completely off the wall that had nothing to do with any of the movies I had made. But when Equity then did get into Sundance, it was such a game changer. Like I got an agent, I had been like cold calling agencies and, like doing everything I could after my first movie to try and get someone to help me get a job. And then when Equity did what it did, like it was just a real blessing because I was able to actually get that representation. That like the first thing I told those guys was like, I really want to work in TV. I really want to, make some money. I mean, I went to film school with Liz. I went to also, like I had student loan debts from undergrad, let alone grad. And then, I just I really felt like I needed to work. So I was like, put me to work. And so they were like, okay, it'll take some time. That's like we can't just snap our fingers and help you figure out this equation. So I was lucky though, again, because a lot of this is luck, that the TV agent that they assigned me to was really like young and hungry and had just been promoted from being an assistant, and really to this day I think is like one of the most brilliant people I know in terms of just putting together the pieces to things. And she saw that was in January 2016. I think by September of that year I got my first TV directing job, and that was with a show for the Sci-Fi Network called Blood Drive about flesh-eating cars drag racing across America. About it not necessarily being reflective of my body of work up until then. Danny, my agent, was like, I think you're just going to really like these guys that are making this show. Your vibe, and they're like, I think that you guys will just get along. And, so much of an effective, like what makes someone effective in that world, in that agency world, is having that instinct and understanding how to pair the right people and components together. And I don't think all of them know how to do that well, but she does. And she was right. We like met and hit it off, and they just were like, we just want someone that's like kind of like-minded, that will just like be able to get along and kind of go on this crazy journey with us in South Africa. And I was like, I'm down. And so that was the first episode I got, was through, having like the right agent at the right time, put together the right pieces.
When you were in between Farrah Goes Bang and Equity and doing those cold calls, and then now being where you are now and kind of looking back on that experience, was that a good strategy for you to try to find an agent at the time? Or is it that the agent comes to you when you're ready?
Yeah, I think it's the latter, right? I mean, that's certainly that was my experience. And it was very frustrating, because I felt like, I had made a movie. I had like killed myself trying to make this first movie, flaws and all, played at good festivals, got some recognition. I thought that was enough, and I remember just feeling quite angry that it wasn't, and, I think everyone comes about, that story differently. I think everyone has different experiences in this industry that, it's hard. It's so hard because you're trying to hold on to like some path, and there is no one path, as we all know. But mine, I mean, maybe it was just like, it would have happened eventually, but like if I had kept banging on those doors. But I had a really hard time getting people to pay attention after that first movie. And I did have to kind of wait for it to come to me. And when it did, it would put me in a much better position to be able to leverage that into what I really wanted. Like they really listened when they did come to me.
I just want to give people a tiny bit of context. And your first feature premiered at Tribeca, and you won the Nora Ephron, all hail Nora Ephron prize. And still it was difficult for you. You're very humble, and you're saying like, it's these good festivals and whatever. I just want to acknowledge like you were in a top tier film festival, and it was still very difficult to get representation.
I remember emailing Nora Ephron's agent at CAA and being like, I won this prize in Nora's memory. Like, will you talk to me? And very kind and like responded, but like kind of kicked the can down the road and gave me to, had some other agent talk to me and was like, it's just like, you're doing well, keep going. Like, it was very, they were all being very, they were not like at all interested in representing me, which is, it's hard because it's like, I get, they need someone to work with too. I had one movie, it didn't get distributed, we were very proud of that movie too, but it like, we self-distributed it. It didn't have it didn't have the story that Equity did, of just like getting bought like in this hot market, like, and just getting all this attention and all this stuff. So I get that those guys need something to work with too, but it was very demoralizing at the time for sure.
That was my next question, was like, what was the distribution for your first feature like? And so you self-distributed. Did you see any return through the self-distribution, or was it kind of like you made a few bucks and that was it?
Made a few bucks and that was it. Like it wasn't anything to necessarily help pay off what we had, like we raised money on Kickstarter to make that movie. And then we did a round of financing, of raising money through private equity for the finishing of that movie. And then with the Nora Ephron Prize came with a cash prize, which helped us like pay off our credit card debts. Like that was really what helped, was like that prize at that festival to help us not be totally in the red. But distributing the movie, even to this day, we'll get like, $100, $200 a year or something. Like people will periodically watch it, but it's not the kind of thing that we were ever able to really make money off of. But we also didn't do the thing that, I'd spent so much time at the time thinking about various revenue streams with it. Like, could we like go to schools, and could we like create like, an educational kind of avenue for it, where like we would, create enough interest in it and dialogue around it to charge speaking fees, or just, kind of exhibition fees at schools, and like kind of political context, as it was a political road movie. Like we were thinking about all that, but then, got wrapped up in just needing to like work and do other things. So we didn't also put in all the efforts and create all the strategies that I know are available to a filmmaker who does self-distribute to make the most of it. Because also at the end of the day for us, it was also about kind of just learning how to make a movie. That first movie is so much about that, right? Like for me, I was just trying to figure out whether it was possible.
Sometimes I'm like, half cooked question. Here comes a half cooked question. We'll see if I cook it while I talk. I've talked to individually, specifically women in film who transition to TV. And I think, at least on my end, there's an intimidation factor. Like I step onto this set and like, I don't even know how to behave. I know that you're a great director, and I know that it was a goal for you for a long time to direct TV, but it sounds like you didn't shadow before you did it. So can you talk a little bit about expectations and reality with regard to TV directing?
Yeah, I did actually shadow one show. I shadowed because of the Fox program, I got connected to someone at HBO who connected me to Divorced, and I shadowed Jesse Peretz on Divorced.
Cool.
I got a little bit of a glimpse into what it is, but but now that I've done like 30 some odd shows, like every show is so different. To an extent you can understand. I think the thing that maybe you need to acknowledge and walk into it understanding is that it's not your movie, right? And so if you need to disabuse yourself of that, then like shadowing is helpful to like kind of really prepare you for the ways in which that's the case, right? Like just the kind of power dynamics that happen on a show when you're an episodic director, just very different than when you're making your own movie. So I guess, I definitely, the first show I did, Blood Drive, because it was so wacky, and it felt like no one was watching us. Like we were in Cape Town, like it was sci-fi, and it was so, every aspect of it was so weird. Like it had all these things I'd never dealt with before, like action sequences and special effects and visual effects, and just like the genre element of that show was just like this aspect of filmmaking I'd never had the privilege to engage with, because it just like, to me, I was always like, what is the cheapest thing I could make? Not this, so all of that, like I had to approach with like there was no choice. I couldn't walk in there and be like, I know exactly what I'm doing. Like I had to approach it with humility, because I was learning as I was going on that job, and then subsequently nearly like every job I've had since, frankly. So I do feel like I knew, and because of the Fox Lab and how many episodic directors I'd listened to say some version of that you really have to like listen and be like a bit of a passenger, like for a while, until you feel like you have all the information you need to step on set and take control of things. That like when I got my first TV job, I felt like I understood psychologically, at least, what I needed to do to succeed in that environment. That makes sense.
Yeah. So I'm really curious to hear about, like, because you're talking about after your first feature, you're trying to get agents and managers, like you're cold calling people, you're feeling stuck, you're feeling frustrated, and then you have this opportunity to direct this movie. Like, can you talk about how you were, because like I'm sure it wasn't just given to you, like you must have had to pitch for it, you must have had to done something to prove for it. So can you just talk about like what your process was when you were trying to win that job, and like what you did that you felt got you the gig in the end?
Yeah, I did, even though I said that like it wasn't necessarily a movie I would have made, I did coincidentally write a Wall Street movie when I was in film school, as like my thesis script was like a female-driven Wall Street movie. But the version of it was much more of like a character study based on this actual real woman, Zoe Cruz, who worked at Morgan Stanley, was vice president of Morgan Stanley in 2008. She was fired for reasons basically like that turned out to be like, she was basically the fall guy or fall woman for a bunch of mistakes men made, And so that's what really the story was about, was being a woman in that environment and like how much you end up taking the blame for things, which is ultimately like Equity's a little bit about that. But the script I had written was much more like if Gus Van Sant made Equity or something, just like a really quiet character study. Like that was always my problem with like writing, was that I was always writing these very boring scripts that I knew would be interesting if I could film them. But Equity Amy Fox, who wrote it, like read like a real like corporate thriller in a way that like I so admired. So that's what I read it, and I kind of saw it because of how well I thought it was written. I do think when you're pitch, and to this day, when I pitch as a director for something, it's so much my success and ability to do that so much depends on how inspired I feel by the reading of the material. If it's written in a way that helps me like really see it, then it's quite easy. You just like tell them what you see based on what you've read. And Equity felt that way. Like I immediately was able to pull together a lot of images and created a pretty extensive lookbook that walked them through the movie. I was like, this is what I think the first sequence would look like in this kind of restaurant, and where the camera would be positioned, in these kind of places, like it's hiding in the corners, trying to understand who this mysterious woman is. And then I talked about colors, and like, I think this character feels like this color and that character feels like that color. And, like, I think all of that stuff, I was able to pull it together pretty quickly because it was that exciting to read. Yeah. And so I probably pitched that to them like a few days after I read the script. It all came together very quickly. And I think that, also just having lived in New York and knowing, I went to college there. I knew people that worked in investment banking, like so many people I knew went to college with went into investment banking, and just the choice to do that and be in that world, and, seeing people's 20s get completely submerged and kind of become completely defined by this industry young, like people go into that business and are dealing with such huge sums of money and kind of making huge sums of money at such a young age. Yeah, it was just a world I knew and had spent some of my 20s around, though I never partook in having money. I didn't figure out how to have money for a very long time. But yeah, so all of that stuff, I think, helped convince them that I knew the world and that they could trust me in like handling, the telling of this story.
Quick follow-up. Sorry, Liz. And you don't have to say the exact number, but can you just talk about what your fee was, or if you got a fee on Equity, and like how you negotiated that? Because I think that's also really important things for filmmakers to know if they're going into like their first hired job.
Yeah, no, I mean, you guys are asking the questions that no one ever asks, because it wasn't great. And I didn't advocate for myself, and I didn't have a lawyer, and I was just desperate to do something, right? Like I was like, how am I going to make a career out of doing this? They paid me $18,000. At the time, I was like, okay, I'm going to move into my parents' house and make this movie. My parents lived in New Jersey, so I like didn't have to pay rent for the year. We like rented out our place in LA, and my husband and my then fiance and I just moved into my parents' house in New Jersey for a year, and I made that movie commuting the same bus I commuted into the city in when I was a teenager. Like it just felt like regression in so many. I was like, it was the biggest opportunity of my life. Like, but in so many ways, my life felt like a giant regression. Having no money and all this stuff. I mean, like, so, I think I probably could have like pushed for more or kind of asked for, I just didn't have that, sense of self-worth, all those things. And then I didn't have, a team around me to help me understand that was not okay. It was not a union project, right? Like, so that's the other thing. Getting into the DGA and being protected by the DGA in terms of that stuff has been a real game changer for me, as someone that never could advocate for myself in terms of that stuff. So yeah.
Wow.
I think Alrik and I are going to toggle you back and forth between certain topics, because I'm jumping back into TV again. And I love what you're saying about approaching things with humility. I also think though, that at a certain point, like you were saying, you take control, you influence the show within your own box, right? As director, I understand it's a writer's medium, it's a producer's medium. Can you talk about instances where you actually got to have influence? I mean, is it in the design of the shot list, or what is it exactly?
Yeah. I mean, it again, totally depends show to show. Some shows have such a defined camera language that your ability to shift things really comes in how you choose to block the scene. There are some shows that I've done where the camera language so different. Like the one that always comes to mind is Queen of the South, was a show that was a three camera show. Every scene, 3 cameras, handheld. It's just like they just hose everything down. It's very documentary style, or it's very much following. But the way you have input on a show like that is through the blocking choices and through locations and how you map out how characters are going to move through space, because the camera will follow the actors, but you have to. And so the only place you can kind of put your fingerprints on things is the way you help kind of shape that part of it. Then other shows there's a couple of shows I've done that were in their first season, where the camera language was really just starting to figure itself out, right? So like For All Mankind was a show that I was fortunate enough to do in the first season. And, the first episode I did was like the first episode that took place entirely on the new lunar base that like people were going to go live on. And the point of the episode was that like it was an impossible scenario, that they were all like living right on top of each other and they were all getting extreme cabin fever because you can't just like step outside for a breath of fresh air on the moon. And so we together, me and the DP talked a lot about creating that sense of claustrophobia, and found we were the first ones to shoot on that set. So that really felt like we were establishing the thing. And so we talked about like, what camera positions on that set made the space feel the most compressed, and how and where to put people to make that sense of claustrophobia the most heightened it could be. So yeah, I mean, I think that it just depends where the show is at and its run, if it's early, if it's late, and then just what is the built-in kind of scenario like, and is there any wiggle room there? There's always the ability, though, I think, to help put your imprint on it through blocking and rehearsals and the way you work with the actors and all that stuff. That is your domain. Like that blocking rehearsal is yours. And of course it's the actors, as well. It's you and the actors like having your time together. And so if you have a good relationship and rapport with the actors, I think you can do a lot in that time period.
So first off, I love For All Mankind, and that episode, Hi Bob, that you're talking about is like one of the best episodes of the show. So amazing work. Yeah, it's really a cool show and an episode. But
Ron Moore wrote, it was so crazy to show up at a table read, like my name on a placard right next to Ron Moore, and sit there listening to this script being read that he wrote. And he's like, he's such a humble, like normal guy. I didn't even realize it was him when I sat down.
Wow.
He didn't. Yeah. And he's just the coolest. It was very, very intense and amazing.
So the question I want to ask is kind of about like when you get into a show like that's like got a big budget, it's like, big names, like fantastic cast, is it different than being on like another show that like might be a smaller budget show? Like, do you feel like your job as a director is easier to do in those kinds of situations? Or is it kind of like you have your tool set you have and, it's kind of the same approach? Or does it actually feel different on a show like that?
It's hard. It just feels, because I ask myself this too, because it never feels that different. And I'll say that's because like the infrastructure of each of these shows is built around the scale of the show, right? So, For All Mankind had like, I block shot 2 episodes. I was shooting for like 24 days. I was shooting for the length of a feature, right? So like I felt like, and every day was different. Some days were like really intensive visual effects days on the surface of the moon. And other days were like, small scenes where 2 characters are meeting at a poetry reading at a bookshop in Van Nuys or something, it's like the every day. I think the thing about a show like that is that every day feels very different. And you feel like you're doing like so many different shows in one show. And then other shows, like Queen of the South, or I did You. I mean, these are shows that like are faster, like the schedules are much tighter. It's like 6 or 7 days for an hour long episode, and there's like one main character driving the story, right? So it's like that feels very different because like, and that feels like making a short film or something, but my job is always just some kind of kernel of working within the kernel of myself, right? The actors, the AD and the DP, like that tiny village is like, it never really feels bigger than that, even if the show is bigger. That makes sense.
That's the best part. That's what's so exciting about doing it. I'm going to make the assumption that you're also pitching and working on feature films while you're working in TV. And can you talk a little bit about, I guess, the parallel of doing that work and also maybe even the success rate and experience? I know that, we've all said it and heard it millions of times that there's work and money in television and independent films are very hard to get off the ground. So I'd just be curious about what your personal experience has been with that.
Yeah, up until this year, I really wasn't working on films very much because I was just doing back-to-back episodes for like 5 years, something like that. Once in a while, a movie project would come, like a studio movie would come along that I'd pitch for, but I was mainly pitching for pilots and for shows, because that really became my world. But now I've been taking this year to kind of engage the feature idea. And so your question is like something I'm going to be figuring out in real time is like, what does that even look like in this day and age for me now that I like have, done all these other things? What does a movie project look like and why am I doing it? I go to therapy to ask myself these questions at this point because I don't know. It means something very different now. It's not about a career. It's about, for me, it was always like, I was just making movies before because I loved doing it, but I was really like focused on just trying to figure out how to be a working director, because I didn't understand how to just focus on the artist, the thing that I wanted to say, though that's always in there, it wasn't, I never felt like I could just do that because it always felt like it needed to have some result or there needed to be some reason or ability to leverage it into, a situation in which I'd be able to like sustain a life as a filmmaker. And now the questions are different now that I feel like, I can feel a little bit more steady working in TV and, like things like that. Like I can answer. Making a movie can mean something different to me now, and I'm trying to figure that out.
Quick follow-up to that. Have you been saying yes to jobs for 5 years because you're trying to bolster that sense of stability or because your attention just turned to television for those 5 years and the passion supported that?
Well, it's both, I definitely felt this immigrant need to just to find stability, to make my parents feel like it's going to be okay. That probably was the primary motivating force, but also I just felt like I got so lucky, it just was like, how could I say no? I just felt like I needed to enjoy the feast before me, and now I'm realizing, okay, now I'm at the point where it's like saying no will give me more choices than saying yes in some scenarios, which is a really great place to be in, but it's different. And it's actually hard for me because I'm so used to just going where the opportunities are. Like equity was a perfect example. I think there were some red flags, like how much they were going to pay me and all these things. But I was just like, yes, let's do it. I was on this yes train for a long time just to work. And I do think, and I say this a lot, and I believe it for myself anyway, that directing is not something that I ever felt like I just could do. It's not something that I felt like I had the self-confidence to be like, I know what I'm doing when I get on set. I do feel like I had to put in, and I haven't quite racked up 10,000 hours, but close to it. I felt like I had to do it a lot in order to feel like this is what I do. Yeah. So that was also why I kept doing it.
Yeah. So do you plan going forward to be doing TV and then in between features? So go feature TV episodes, or do you feel like it's a thing that you could do together, or is it going to be more like you just have to pick one and do that for a while and then go back to the other?
I feel like the industry is so backwards when it comes to it. I personally feel like I should be able to go back and forth and do whatever, I think what we're talking about is just like format. I mean, you're talking about the theatrical film business. I don't know what to say about that. I don't think anyone does. And anyone that claims to is just lying, right? So I don't know how to calculate like that. And I know there is a difference between TV and movies in that regard, but otherwise you're just talking about like a running time and format and like episodic versus like an unbroken storytelling experience. Like HBO Max dropping back, like I don't understand. Like they made that movie for the streaming platform. Like what is the argument? You know, what is this belief that suddenly they're going to be able to like, we're going to be able to go back to some sort of golden hued age of like where like the theatrical film business is their bread and butter. Like we're just not there anymore. Like, and people just need to like get on board. So I feel personally, and I feel like as a viewer, like I'll watch any of it. I'll watch a movie, I'll watch a TV show, I'll watch Unorthodox, like a 4-hour movie as far as I'm concerned, but it was a 4-episode TV show as far as I'm sure, like, you know, the award circuit is concerned. So I always use that show also specifically as an example of like, what is a movie and what is a TV show? Because it all seems like the same to me, you know?
I have a gendered question that I'm going to apologize for. I'm apologizing for at the top, and I'll probably apologize at the end. But it's really a personal one, and I think it applies to Alrik as well, even though it's gendered, because women always get asked this question. How are you planning to decide on what to say yes to and what to say no to with the variables in your head of a family? Like, I guess I'm just saying, like, I'm very scared of not seeing my son for more than a few days. And so that weighs into some of my decision making. And I'm just curious how you feel and what you're thinking.
I don't know. I mean, I'm curious how you have been navigating it.
Day shoots, no overnights, and really short shoots. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm doing my first commercial this month for this reason. I was like, oh, okay, maybe if I cut into that a little bit, like those are much shorter. But I think it's just going to be a matter of like, I have to really feel like I am getting something more than just, it's not just the job, you know, at this point, which I feel like I'm in a privileged position to be able to, if I'm able to say no, that means that like the things I'm saying yes to has to be a reason for it. And it has to be something that has to do with us. It has to be providing some sort of salve for my heart, you know, like, and if it's not doing that, then yeah, exactly. Like, why would I mean, I do still, I'm going to have a mortgage, like all these things are still going to have to be accounted for. So at some point I'm going to have to say yes. But I do think the equation is going to, it's going to have to mean something to me as much as my family means something to me in order for me to care. Cause it's so, at the end of the day, it's all so out of your hands, whether you're making an independent film or whether you're shooting a big like TV show that doesn't end up working for some reason. Nobody's watching it. You know, there's so much stuff out there that like I've worked on shows that nobody ended up watching, and I've made movies that nobody ended up watching. And I know what it feels like to work that hard and have nobody care at the end of the day. And so it's like the process has to be worth it, right? Because it's like you have no control over the outcome in terms of how the world is going to receive the thing. So I think it's going to be about that. It's going to be like knowing that, okay, like spending, like did Outlander, right? Outlander, this was way before having a baby, but like I really enjoy Outlander. I enjoy the show, yeah. But I did it because I was like, I want to spend a summer in Glasgow with my husband and like visit. I have like cousins there I hadn't connected to in over a decade. There were life reasons I wanted to do that show as well, where I just wanted to go like experience something in my life beyond just the show itself. And I think a lot of my choices moving forward will end up being some version of that.
That's great.
Yeah. My plan is just make as much as I can before my kid goes into school, so then I can just, you know, they can travel with me if that's possible, you know, and then like worry about the school stuff later.
Yeah. No, I mean, there is that too. Like, I don't know how any of that will shape out when it comes to like school and like wanting to provide some stability for her. Like, I don't know if we'll be able to. I'm sure that will shape things differently. And, you know, that's okay.
We interviewed a family of filmmakers a few weeks ago, and they figured out their own model of homeschooling and making movies on the road. But that's a very specific model. Sorry, Alrik, go for it.
Yeah. That's what with co-directing with their, I think, 11-year-old, 6-year-old. So yeah, mother, father, and 6-year-old daughter co-directors. It sounds crazy. Awesome. But also Also lots of fun.
The DP for Queen of the South's spent so much time selling me on homeschooling because he homeschools his kids. They've traveled the world with him. Every job he does, his whole family comes with him. And he's like, they are like the greatest. Like they are just like these little artists that march to the beat of their own drum. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure that is a great choice too. It's just like, who knows who your kid is going to be like. Maybe your kid will take to that. Maybe they won't. Yeah. I don't know. That's why it's like, you can't predict. I have no idea what the future will look like in that regard.
So I have a super nerdy question for you. So you've done like Miss Marvel, The Punisher, Titans, like all these awesome comic book characters, in different shows. What do you do for your prep for that? Like, because, you're taking on a huge responsibility, directing an episode with these beloved characters that like us nerds like love so much and want to make sure that we're seeing them for the first time on screen, like that they're being shown in a proper way. Do you go into like reading all the comic books and like getting a background of the characters, or do you kind of just like looking at what is on the page and like doing your work based off of the scripts that you're being provided?
All of it. I mean, there's a lot of hours to kill sitting in that office, like between meetings and stuff, right? So like, I'll definitely read all the comics. I'll definitely watch all the things. I'll definitely, of course, I read the whole season and everything they give me and watch everything they've shot up until the episode I get. I'll read a lot of stuff on the internet. I'll go on like the wikis and I'll go on like the Reddit threads, and I'll be really aware, maybe too aware. I don't know if they appreciate this. I never like say this to the showrunners or the people I'm working with, but I'm very curious what the dialogue with Miss Marvel. I was very curious what the dialogue was already, like in terms of what the fans wanted out of it and what they were nervous about. They were nervous about a lot of things.
Yeah.
Go into it. I'll say that. I want to know all of that, and then but I don't know if none of that really like services the job as much as just like trusting and engaging with your department heads in an honest, authentic way, and like, and making sure that they are all understanding at least the core of what like the story and what the character, what the kernel of storytelling is really like, about, and working with the actors. I mean, I do think I ended up getting a lot of these like comic book, like genre shows, like one led to the other and then the other and the other. But like, I do think what I've been effective at in those environments is working with the actors and giving them a space in which they can create as grounded of a performance as they can, because there's so much other shit going on around them that like it becomes very hard, right, to focus and just remember like, this is what this scene is about. This is the last, you were here and now you're going here, and this scene is how we're connecting those things. Just like being that person for them. Like, I think that is something they need so much, especially on these big comic book shows, on these like big action, these shows with these huge set pieces, that's why I've found a groove there.
All that stuff's got to help though, like all that reading, hearing the fans, I think that stuff, even if it doesn't feel like it matters, I'm sure it really does matter. And as a fan, I appreciate hearing that.
Yeah. Like with The Punisher, it's just like I didn't have to do much because Jon Bernthal, like he right. He knew what he was doing. He
nailed it. He's incredible.
Yeah, but I found myself really fascinated by what it is about Frank Castle and like, why is it that like he resonates? And I think John really understood that obviously from the inside out, but like the trauma, like, and the show really obviously was about his trauma and him reliving his trauma, like nearly every episode.
Yeah.
But I found all of that. I think that stuff is, when you dig into it, it's like all of these things are about, it's like, I think about this a lot because I grew up Hindu. Like, it's like we had a lot of mythology. Like we have a lot of stories about like gods and demons and like a lot of like kind of supernatural business happening and in an effort to kind of save humanity or to find some sense of our own humanity or find something kind of spectacular or kind of worth saving in our own humanity. And I think the reason all these things are so popular right now is that we're kind of searching, so as a society, I think we're searching for something the same, because I don't know, I was just watching MSNBC. I'm like, oh, right, the world is on fire and it's not stopped for nearly a decade now.
I think that's a cue to, we have these kind of like more longitudinal questions, more like bird's eye questions. So it feels like a good transition to what's the first film you ever made and how do you feel about it now?
First film I ever made. Well, because I guess I would technically call the first film I ever made, this documentary I made in undergrad. It was a documentary of myself cyber stalking a film student that I had a crush on from afar. It was kind of about like how you could develop this whole relationship in your head without ever meeting someone. I think I still have a great fondness for it. I think that I don't think I even really had a crush on that guy. I just thought it would be very funny to make a movie about this, and I think I was onto something. Yeah, I feel good about that one. I've made a bunch of other movies as an undergrad that I wouldn't necessarily feel as proud of, but that one I think was pretty good.
What's the best filmmaking advice you've ever received?
I mean, Tommy Schlamme, when I did Snowfall was the second episode I did. And he said like probably the most obvious thing, but I think about all the time, which is that every actor wants to be directed. Like, you know, like whether or not it's Ed Harris, who we just worked with on Westworld, or like Iman Vellani, who's never done anything before, who's Miss Marvel, like that every actor wants that to be directed. Now, what that means, what directing really means, I'm sure is what actors want out of their directors, I'm sure is different based on, you know, who the actor is, but it just it's a useful thing to hear, especially when you're about to direct a scene with Ed Harris and you're like, how do I even approach him? But then I was like, oh, he wants me to approach. He wants to talk to me. I'm the person he wants to talk to. He doesn't want a million other people like fussing around, you know, like he wants to focus, but the person he wants to come to him and have a conversation is the director. And it's important for me to remember that.
What's the worst filmmaking or storytelling advice you've seen, heard, witnessed, whatever?
Oh, I mean, like I've been on shows where like the producing director or the pilot director will say just make sure you get like the great shot, you know, like, because like if you don't get it, then it'll be the first thing they drop, you know, is like just make sure like you get really cool, you have like really cool shot and you get that first. I'm like literally imitating the person that I'm thinking of. But I hate that advice because I'm just like, I don't think that feels very results oriented. Talk about result, you know, like that just feels like I'm much more about like the organic kind of revealing of like what the process needs to be based on the rehearsal. You know, like we go in there with ideas for shots for sure, and an idea of like how we want the scene to map out and how, you know, like an approach, but I really believe in letting the rehearsal surprise you, you know? So I hated that advice. But whatever. I just smiled and nodded and was like, of course. A lot of what you have to do.
Do you have a goal as a filmmaker?
Yeah, I mean, it's very maybe highfalutin, but I just want to feel like I don't think I've gotten there. I don't think I've made anything or done anything that has really felt like this pure channel from like what I want to say or what I want to express to like the thing, you know, like I'm trying to find that still, that perfect connection. Filmmaking is so mediated. It's so diluted by the process that I hope that through the searching and through the journey that at some point I can find that channel and create and make something that feels like unbroken in that way.
God, that's beautiful. If you could go back in time, what piece of advice would you give yourself?
Such a hard one, right? Because it's like, I think you have to just go through it and to get where you are. I am a believer in that. I maybe just don't be so hard on yourself. Mm-hmm. You know, like I think that I need to tell myself that now, today. I need to tell myself that when I was 13, you know, like I think that's one of the ones that I probably tell myself regardless.
The last question, which you can answer for TV, film, independent storytelling, but because the name of our podcast is Making Movies is Hard. So we always ask, is making movies hard?
I think is making movies hard. I don't know why this is a hard question because
they're all hard questions. Yeah. They are.
Yeah, it's like a good question. It's like a very distilled question, but it's quite hard to answer because I don't think like when you know what you want, you know, out of a shot or a scene, like that part is not hard. It's everything else. It's everything that conspires against you just getting there, you know? It's other people. It's their opinions. It's the location, it's the time of day. So I guess making movies is hard because it's all of those things. But like, the actual like impulse to do it and your instincts and kind of like the desire. It's like the only reason I'm doing this is because because it would be so much harder to have done anything else, you know? So in that way, it's not hard. It's like the only thing I ever like felt like I could do, you know? So.
I do you have a call to action that you like to share? Is it like follow you on Twitter or, you know, go watch all my stuff? Is there like a CTA you want to share?
Follow me on Twitter. Go watch all my stuff. No, just like enjoy your life. Short. We're only here for a little bit.
Alrik, what do you remember about our chat with Meera?
Oh, wow. Well, I was really looking forward to this one because I had seen a bunch of her episodes, like right while we were talking about getting her on the show. I like was watching her episodes of For All Mankind and then like, you know, eagerly awaiting Miss Marvel to premiere and then watching her episodes of Miss Marvel. And yeah, so she was like, you could just tell like super talented, right? Like right off the bat. And then talking to her, it was really amazing to hear like the story of like kind of coming from the same beginnings as us, like, you know, made an indie feature for no money, scrapped it all together, didn't know what to do yet. Like she literally did what I am doing now. Like I am like cold emailing agents and managers and having no luck. And she did that after her first feature. So I felt like a real like connection to her in a way. Like she did what I am doing. And then, you know, she's got this feature that she got hired on and like, I'm trying to do that too. And you'll see if that works out for me. But yeah, it was really cool to just see like where she came from and where she is and like how you can really catapult to the highest heights starting the way that anyone does, you know, and it just really kind of depends on tons of factors like luck and positioning and, you know, like skills and stuff. And I think that she was really smart in the way that she like once she like had the movie that got into Sundance and she was getting these opportunities to speak to managers and agents, she was very like focused in her goals. Like she wasn't wishy-washy. She wasn't like, oh, maybe I'll do this, maybe I'll do that. She was like, I want to be a TV director. I want to direct television. And like she had that goal. And I think that is a big part of the reason why she was so successful, because she like knew what she wanted and she went after it rather than just like kind of waiting for something to come to her lap that she liked and fancied, you know. She was like, no, I'm going to go after it. And oh, it's not the type of thing I'm good at. I've never done special effects in sci-fi before. Like it's a sci-fi channel show that like, you know, whatever, like isn't what I want to be doing. It doesn't matter. Like she just went after it and did a great job at it. And like, yeah, now she's like, you know, done all the amazing things that like, you know, it's like who doesn't want to have directed for these shows like Walking Dead, Punisher, you know, Teen Titans. I mean, it's like pretty amazing like how far and wide her directing skill has taken her. Like, man, high cast, like all these shows, like huge shows, like it's really amazing. So that's what I remember most about her is just like her focus and like how smart she was about her career. But what about you?
Yeah. No, this is such a wonderful conversation. I loved this interview so much. And it's also is interesting because like Meera's a friend. I mean, we're not close friends, but she's a colleague of mine, and she was very kind to participate in a South by panel that I put together a few years ago about micro-budget filmmaking. And so I had the context of her first film, Farrah Goes Bang, but I didn't know how she got equity. And I'd always had these assumptions of, you know, I don't know, like a long pathway or intricate relationships or nepotism or, you know, I like read into like not knowing how she got that amazing opportunity and then hearing how she really worked for it. It was a little bit of luck, but it was a lot of hard work. Like it was so lovely to hear the details of the pitch for equity and then her stark honesty about how she should have advocated for herself more. That was so refreshing to hear. And also I really liked the end of the conversation. When you left, Meera and I had a little off the record conversation, which, you know, like I told Jeff to cut and hopefully he did. But it was really nice just to have like this look how, even though we're in starkly different places as filmmakers, her and I, we still were battling the same things, like the imposter syndrome or how do we figure out balance in our lives or sustainability. Like she was very honest and vulnerable with us. And I love that.
Awesome. Yeah, she's great. And she's a cute little baby too.
She's a cute little baby. So, Alrik, it's time for the game.
Woo.
As a reminder, this is a game that our producer Eric Toms has devised, and it's a challenge. It's a blind challenge where one of us, Alrik or I, asks the other what they would do in a hyper-specific production problem. on set. All right. So here's Eric's latest question. And just to tee this up even further, Eric asked us a question last week that we thought was too easy. So he's trying to step it up this time. So we'll see how he stepped it up. All right. You are on day 17 of a 22-day shoot. You've been shooting out of order, and you have to shoot your lead actress out in the next 2 days. I'm surprised you aren't taking notes. You're filming a period road trip movie, but it takes place on a train as two young women are train hopping in the 1980s. There's more. There's a whole other paragraph, Alrik. Upon arriving on set, your producer tells you that the train you've been shooting on was recalled and cannot be used for the remainder of the shoot. You have another train, but it looks very modern and in no way looks like a train you've been shooting with. I just want to take a second and just want to appreciate that Eric knows how much Alrik loves trains. And I just really enjoy the train specificity of this question. Okay, going back. You have yet to film the climax of the film. And to make matters worse, your lead actress has to leave earlier than expected. Now you have to shoot her out by the end of the day as opposed to 2 more days. What do you do, Alrik? What do you do?
Well, just to be completely honest, he sent me this one thinking that this was the one for me to ask you on the next episode.
But you said you didn't.
No, again. He sent me another one. So the next one he sent was this one.
No, Eric! So you already heard this question. So you're like just patiently listening to me.
Yes.
Theatrically perform. Well, I think we should go ahead and have you answer it, and then I'll try to weigh in on.
I'll answer it. Yeah. No, it was funny because I thought about it. I didn't finish my answer. I thought about this, but I didn't actually come up with my final answer. I just started thinking about what I would do.
Right.
And my answer all revolves around close-ups.
Yeah.
So I would just do lots of close-ups, and try to cheat the angles so that it looked close enough, and have lots of shallow depth of field so that you don't necessarily can notice so much what the scene is, and then maybe bring in some props that we may have that were on the other train that could help make it feel like it's the right train even though it's not. And then the other problem where I have one less day with the actor, this is a rewriting problem. So then basically we have to just take the whole the scenes that we have and then figure out a way either to cut them or to make them more concise so that we can get them done in the time that we have. So if we had a whole bunch of shots planned for something, maybe we cut all that coverage and we just do it in less takes, or we rewrite it so there's just less words and less things happen. So you can try to because in filmmaking and storytelling, generally with almost anything, there's a way to do it with less words, no words, or to make that scene not matter. Right? So you could rewrite other things around it. So it's okay, that scene doesn't have the same impact that you thought it did, Yeah. So I think when you get that information, you basically, whatever time you have, you just have to figure out how can you tell your story with the time that you have in a compelling way that doesn't severely alter the story. And if that's not possible, if it's you need every single thing that was in there, then you have to plan on a reshoot or a reschedule, which is basically kind of in the alternate is so what we did is okay, can we cut this or do we have to reschedule this? And most of the times it was either cut or shorten, and then sometimes it was okay, well, let's push this whole scene out to our pickup days that are going to happen in 2 weeks or whatever. So that would be my approach. But what about you, Liz? What will you do?
100% agree with everything you said. The only thing that I thought to add is I work with an amazing production designer, Marcy Mout, and she has these tricks. We're trying to dress up a bathroom that didn't have a lot of style. And there's these vinyl stickers you can put on a mirror to make it look no longer like a mirror. Or there's different, there's different floor samples you can buy in a small scale, just a few squares that you can use to replicate different flooring. If the flooring of the train is different, you can add on new flooring and close-ups. I'm just saying I would look at the fixtures and I would look at the coloring. I would look at the background of the original train that you're so in love with. And I would see, how do we replicate those in the background of that closer coverage that you're talking about? And how do you fake it in the close-up with there's art details, right? The replicating the floor and replicating the fixtures, doing some paint, maybe doing a small build on top of the train. It's more modern. Maybe it has more space, something like that. I mean, I know you don't have a lot of time, but I would actually look to art department as a way to help solve the problem. And obviously I'd go to my editor and I'd see, what are the circle takes and what of the train have we seen and what of the train haven't we seen? And is there a way to fake a new part of the modern train for a part of the original train we haven't seen yet? Totally agree, closer coverage. And then I'd err on the side of cutting subplots. If you lose an entire, from the way you described it, you thought you had like way more time. Like you just found out the actress is going to be leaving one day earlier than you thought.
Yeah.
And a one day is a really meaningful amount of time. So it feels like there may be an entire subplot that you can cut. And that's what I would err on the side of rather than trimming. It's like, is there an element of this film that I could take out that maybe was overcomplicated at some point? So that's what I would do.
Nice. Awesome. I think that's a great solution and kind of different, similar thinking to me, but also a little different, like taking out the subplots. I think it's probably like a good note in general. Just if your movie has a lot of subplots, maybe you don't need all of them if you're looking to save time, I think did we both cut subplots out of one of our movies? Didn't you cut a subplot out of Speed of Life? And I cut a subplot out of The Alternate, I think. So yeah, subplots, you don't need them. Well, that was an awesome game. Thank you, Eric, as always, for the amazing question, even though that's a funny switch up. You can always send us a question or comment or suggestion to podcast@makingmoviesishard.com. Or if you really like the show, you can leave us a review on iTunes. Let us know. Did you like the game? Is it boring? Is it great? We would love to know because I think Liz and I enjoy it more than the news segments. So if you guys aren't missing news and you like the game, we're going to keep doing it unless you hate the game. Even if we'll probably keep doing it either way, but just let us know. And finally, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at MMIH Podcast and YouTube at Making Movies Is Hard Podcast. Make sure to check out the International Screenwriters Association, the ISA. They're an organization designed to connect writers with filmmakers through a number of programs they offer. So head on over to www.networkisa.org today to sign up for free. Thanks to Meera for coming on the show and putting up with my gushing fandom. I gush so much over her, but she's great, so I couldn't help myself. Thanks to our editor, Jeff Reimut, for the wonderful editing, and to our producer, Eric, for just being completely awesome. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you all next week.